Good evening, everybody, Zoom and the few folks that joined us in Town Hall tonight. We're glad that we're back in Town Hall and it's open for business, so this is a good thing. Tonight, we're hearing 4 different petitions. The Design Review Board has 4 members this evening with us, which constitutes a quorum. We have Leslie Costa, who is a registered architect or landscape architect. On Zoom is Nick Avery. He's an architectural historian architect. Next to me is Cyrus Gibson. He's a general contractor, and I'm a general contractor. My name is Franklin Rose. So that's the board that's sitting tonight. We oversee the landscaping, signage, siting of the building, and the architectural review. Our opinion goes to the planning board, and from there, it's taken to the zoning board. So we report to the planning board, and actually, for some committee, so to speak, of planning. So tonight's meeting agenda, there's 4 applicants for tonight. The first one we'll hear is a multifamily residential development. This is strictly conceptual plan review. The applicant, Peter Realty, is proposing a modification to a previously approved multifamily condominium development by adding 3,727 square feet addition at Bristol 567 Bristol Ferry Road. And it's R20. And is there anybody here tonight on Zoom that would like to speak to this petition, please?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. This is John McCoy. I'm the attorney representing the Peter Realty. Marianne Dornfield, the principal of Peter Realty, is here tonight. Tom Principe, the engineer, is here. And we also have Tamara Tui, the architect, who's here as well.
Evening.
Just very briefly, this was a special use permit that was granted by the zoning board back in 2014. At that time, it allowed 5 dwelling units with 6 bedrooms. The applicant's here tonight, and what is there now is 3 bedrooms. The applicant's here tonight to, you mentioned, add 2 units with 3 more bedrooms, so there'll be a total of 9. I'm going to step back and let the engineer come forward. I know he can do some screen share, I believe, and then talk about the project, give you some details, because this is conceptual review, so I don't want to take up too much of your time.
Tom, you're muted.
Sorry about that, my apologies. Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Tom Principe, Principe Engineering Company, registered professional engineer here in the state of Rhode Island. On behalf of the applicant, John, thank you for that. I'd just like to kind of briefly run through some of the conceptual elements from a civil engineering standpoint of view. Then we can kind of kick it back to the board members to see if they have any additional questions. And then maybe we could have our architect follow my presentation to kind of discuss some of the preliminary drawings that she had come up with for this proposal. Again, as John indicated earlier, we're proposing a 3-bedroom duplex unit. So it is a 2-family structure, which is going to be attached to an existing 3-unit, 6-bedroom dwelling that is currently existing and in operation today at 567 Bristol Ferry Road. Our proposal is to add this 3-bedroom duplex, which is approximately 3,727 square feet footprint towards the rear portion of the existing structure. It will be connected with a breezeway. And again, our architect will show you a couple of elevations on what that might look like and some of those details. And speaking with the fire marshal, Mark Remos, we had another conversation with him today on the access road, which will potentially right now at this point, the board has a concept where the access road will go on all four sides of the proposed duplex building. Some of the conversations we've had with some of the board members and also with the fire marshal, one of the concerns, which I think is a valid concern, is on some of the existing vegetation in the forms of some of the large mature trees that run along Barker's Lane. Barker's Lane is a 30-foot private right-of-way. It's a very narrow gravel roadway. So the fire marshal doesn't want to use this as his primary access. But one of my conversations with him today was about possibly doing some sort of a cul-de-sac or a turnaround instead of coming along the north side of Barker's Lane in the property line, because we could probably access it in a different location. He was open to eliminating the north access on this project itself, which would do two things that would help us preserve some of those larger growth trees in between Barker's Lane and our north property line, and also allow us to preserve some of that existing septic system that's already in place today. There's a fairly new septic system that was designed and installed by our office designed the system for this project a few years ago. So it's a fairly new conventional Elgin in-drain system that services the 3-unit 6-bedroom dwelling currently. So again, if we can modify this access driveway and work with the fire marshal, we can preserve those larger growth trees to the north side of this project, and also preserve that newer on-site wastewater treatment system that services the existing 3-unit building. And with that, we have preliminary DEM soil testing that we did when we first started this project for another client who first started to develop this property. So we have some of that soils information, a water table information for a septic system that would service separately this 3-bedroom proposed duplex. And also we would also design something similar that we did on a previous application for a duplex to the south of this site. I believe that attaches adjacent to it. We'll be having and proposing bioretention rain gardens that will mitigate the stormwater runoff from the proposed roof area. And again, I think that pretty much sums up some of the technical items on our side for the civil engineering portion of it. I could either see if the board members have questions now, or maybe have our architect present her side of the project, and then we could have questions later. It's up to you.
Yeah, if we could hear from the architect, then we'll kind of regroup our summary at the end, or questions.
Sounds good. Tamara?
Great. Thank you, everybody. I do have some renderings, so I'm gonna actually, can the host allow me to share my screen, or is that?
Yeah.
Thank you. So we started actually looking at what the materiality for this new development would look like, and we really want to keep it in the context of New England and Rhode Island. So it does actually look similar to this rendering you see here, until I'm able to share. Oh, here we go. I'm able to share now. Okay, so let me do this. And okay, oops, excuse me. So this would be what the front elevation would start to look like. So we do have 1 unit here on the left, 1 unit here on the right. And we really want to look at starting to use a lot of the traditional familiar materials. We have a lot of use for shingles in the natural wood. We do have a very traditional clapboard style here, and then we're gonna throw in some accents of some metal standing seam roof as well. We're trying to keep the scale of it relatively small, so it's not going to be this large mass. And then over here, you can start to see, we're starting to figure out what the connector will be. We want the connector to just be a hint of the architecture that we're using for the homes. So we're looking more of this as like as a 3-season breezeway, a kind of a structure with lots of light, but really we're taking all the elements we're using for the main area, and basically we'll be scaling it down to a smaller level. So as you see here, we have the front door here with a porch. We're gonna have the garage here. Then as you turn around, you see that the shingles wrap around, and as you get to the rear of the house, we're keeping it very traditional, very New England, very in the familiar language of the area. So if there are any questions, we'd be happy to answer them.
Is the breezeway, are you modifying the existing building that's there? Because isn't that going into like an apartment right now?
So the idea for the breezeway is that really it'd be a structure that you access from the exterior. So basically any of the tenants could be using this as like a space to go read or go. It's more of a destination. It's less of a passageway.
So there's only 2 apartments in the new building, right?
Correct. Yes.
Because one thought, I went over there and I talked to one of the people that live in one of the apartments, and we were just looking at it, and I was wondering if there was a possibility to flip the house so that the garages, like flip the whole thing so the garages are on the south side, and make the breezeway on the, like, connect from the parking lot to the building, so the patio is basically on the other side of it. Because just for also like the fact that having the garages facing the north side is very icy, and but then it gets the parking for those 2 garages away from the trees, like you would back into the, like we were talking about maybe not even having it go around. So if it flipped to the south side, I'm just wondering if you could maybe try to see if that's an option.
Yeah, I think a lot of that would actually depend on the arrangement of the access road. But I think if we start to flip this, we would need to do some kind of landscape or screening, so that way from the existing patio that's there, you're not just looking at garages. It's more of like a confined space. So there's a little more separation of the cars versus where the people will be occupying. But yeah, we could definitely look at that. You want to bring up the site plan again? Yes, so I think something we need to look at is if this flips and the garages are here and here, I think the existing kind of patio is this space. So maybe the breezeway becomes an extension of this, maybe like a little covered area. And then we need maybe something here, so that way the traffic coming in will not actually disturb those who are using this space.
Is it possible to even just, I don't know if it would make sense, but move the whole building south so that the garage is along the, you know what I mean? So it's closer to that first roadway.
So put it over here.
Yeah, and then the breezeway could go from the parking that's existing, like the existing parking area to the new building. So it kind of overlooks the patio that's existing,
That's interesting, yeah.
And then that way, this access road that you have on the south side of the property, that comes up to the northeast corner where you have a rain garden. The road behind the rain garden, that's where you could have a turnaround for the trucks fire trucks or whoever delivers, then they can come back down. Because as the way you have it drawn now or laid out, to have that access road come across the north side of the property with just row of arborvitae there. As Mr. Principi said, there are a lot of mature trees there. So this way, you would take out that road entirely and you could leave those intact mature trees in place. So by just flipping basically, across the east-west axis, that building, just completely flip it backwards.
Mhm.
You can get rid of half that access road there, and you can also leave the existing trees in place, which we think is important.
There were like about 20, at least 20 trees. there
Yeah,
Along
yep, that's what we counted.
taken out, and about 10 of them were like 2 to 3 feet in diameter. It was a little scary. There's even a hawk's nest with babies, so just so you know.
That'll work from our end too. I mean, I think that's a great idea. That's a great suggestion because we'll flip and rotate and mirror essentially the geomat of the septic system itself, and that field would be much smaller because right now the footprint we show for this 5-row geomat in the southeast corner is servicing, the existing building and the proposed building, because essentially we had to remove the not so old septic system that's currently in place. So I think, it also is an advantage for the existing building to not replace a perfectly good septic system that was recently installed too. So.
There's also an existing, when we were there, at the northeast corner of that front parking area, there's a underground storage tank at the corner, which, as proposed right now, that driveway, proposed driveway would be going right over. So, you'd be avoiding that as well.
It's
Yep.
definitely less cost compliant, I would say.
Yeah.
Yep. So would we supplement, would the board want to see us supplement a buffer on the north side if we were to go this route as well, even though they have those mature trees? Is that what the board might be looking for? Is more of a screening on the north along Barker's Lane?
I wouldn't think so.
Okay,
A lot of trees.
okay,
Yeah, somebody would need to go out and identify, properly place on this plan where those mature trees are, and then, mark those on there and add in supplemental, whatever, you're proposing with evergreens and deciduous and so on.
Yep. That's a good idea. Yep.
That's good feedback. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you for talking to the fire.
Thanks.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
Oh yeah, no, it was a good conversation, and Mark's again, he's adamant about saving those mature trees as well. So again, just to let the board know, I told him, based on our conversation tonight with the board members, I was going to follow up with another phone call with him tomorrow to let him know how the board felt as well, and then possibly maybe meet him on site this week to review it in more detail. But I think knowing that. Again, as long as our architect agrees as well, which I think she does, we're going to flip this building and move it to the south. That'll allow us some more flexibility. So, I'm sure if I give him that information as well, he'd definitely be more amenable to modifying it. And again, the 20-foot width, on other projects, he's allowed us to reduce that down to 18 and 16 on the travel way, which would reduce our gravel. It's just the NFPA requires 20 foot of unobstructed. So it's not necessarily 20-foot travel way, gravel roadway on the width itself. His vehicles need at least 16 feet on the width, which we can accommodate. So we can work with him on that as well and report back to the board.
I have a question for the architect.
Yes.
Because this is conceptual. Are you going to offer any more detail? Like, is there going to be ratios and elevations? For instance, like the garage door. I mean, it's hard to tell from just the preliminary sketches what that's going to look like. If it's going to be colonial with windows, that type of thing. The windows themselves, we
Mhm.
would like to see divided windows, mullions in them,
Mhm.
maintain a certain look in Portsmouth.
Right, I totally understandable. Yeah, so I think now that we have another revision of this, once we go to flip it and we start to really develop it, we can start to show more detail of the style of the windows, what the metal roof's gonna look like, the scale really of the clapboards and the shingles to really give you a better idea for all the materiality of this.
At this point, I'd like to ask if there's any abutters that would like to speak to the petitioner that are either online or at town hall tonight.
So if you're online or called in, you can dial for the call-in, dial *6 and it will raise your hand. If you're using the Zoom app, you can use the raise hand function. Again, it's *6 if you're calling in to raise your hand, and if you're using the Zoom app, it's the raise hand button.
John, real quick, what's your last name again? I can't read.
It's Principe.
Oh, I know Tom, John, I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry. Oh, okay.
I see his face, we're having trouble reading your last name.
I'm reading what he has and he doesn't know. So
Boy, that's it.
it's not great.
No,
No.
see, that's why I was gonna say it.
I just got those digits.
Yeah, did you?
And tell me your name again, the architect,
Tamara Tui from GMI Architects.
Mark Choi.
Tui, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The hazards of a hybrid Zoom call. Sometimes the
And, can't see.
So Mike, has anybody raised their hand?
No.
At this point? No other abutters are in the room that would like to speak to it, nobody's online that would like to speak to it. So I'd kind of like to put a summation of what we're looking for together for our next meeting. When did you, I'll ask Tom, when did you plan on going to the planning board, Tom? When was, like August? Is that what you're thinking?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I think we should do another round of revisions here and work with our architect, work with the fire chief, come back to the design review board with our revised plans and maybe have another recommendation to get to the planning prior to going to zoning. Yeah, I think we need another round of revisions.
So we're into July. And we need the second month of first Monday, sorry. Yeah, that's not gonna work. That's the 4th of July. I mean, to make you wait a month, I mean, our board's pretty flexible. I mean, if we're on Zoom, like if I'm traveling, Nick or somebody, or Leslie can run the meeting. And it depends on town council availability of all. So let me get back to you that, I'll talk to the members, see what their availability looks like. And obviously need to talk to Mike about the use of town hall and Zoom, because we are still maintaining Zoom meetings for a lot of things, as we know. So we'll get back to you on that. In the meantime, more or less Leslie's suggestion, I think that you could agree with a lot of what she had to say and certainly what Nick had to say. And you've spoken to the fire marshal, so I think pretty much what we're looking for. So I'm gonna leave it at that. I mean, we'll write an opinion, which we have to, and notify you, but you guys good with that sort of review at this point? And because it's conceptual, we usually go back 1 or 2 times anyway, so this is all good stuff.
And actually, Frank, just to cover all of our bases for our board, I doubt there is, but just so someone there can say there's no plans for additional signage or any additional lighting for this proposed building, right?
I didn't ask that, but it's because of its nature, I didn't even think, Nick, you're right.
Okay.
There's not gonna be wall packs off the building, obviously, or light stands or anything like that. Oh,
Yeah, but I mean, it's, okay, I mean, not on the plan, but obviously, obviously they're not adding any street lights on the access road or anything, so just
I don't believe
wanted to
so.
make sure
No.
I wouldn't expect it to be, but just wanted to make sure
Okay.
it's on the record.
Yeah, I missed it, Nick, but like you said, I didn't expect that.
Great.
yes. So if there's nothing else, I think we can get ready to move on to the next petitioner. I thank the petitioners for tonight joining us and presenting their project.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you
Mr.
very
Chairman.
much for your
Members.
time.
Thanks.
Thank you all.
Appreciate
Thank
the
you.
comments. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. So, after the meeting. Yeah. This PG. Yeah.
It's not the whole process.
Well, yeah, no, it's 1200 West Main. Yeah, 1200.
I'm sorry, can you just, is it Mara?
TOO. Yeah, that helps.
Mike, just let us know when it's ready.
Yeah, ready.
Oh, we're ready, okay. So our second petition this evening before the design review board is a plan unit development. We're here tonight for a conceptual plan review. It's located at 1200 West Main Road. The applicant PNG Realty LLC are the owners. They're proposing to build 6 building developments to support a retail and tradesman center at both 1200 and 1220 West Main Road. 44 lot 7 and 8 within a light industrial zone district. So who's on the line that would like to speak to this petition tonight?
Yeah, Russell Jackson's the attorney for
Okay.
1200 West Main Road LLC.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. J. Russell Jackson on behalf of the applicant, 1200 West Main Road LLC. We have with us this evening the principal of 1200 West Main Road LLC, Mr. Gregory Coe. And he's prepared just to sort of give an overview of the project. And we also have the project engineer, Lynn Small. I think I'm hoping, we pulled together an updated landscaping plan that was submitted to Michael earlier today. And I'm hoping that was at least digitally able to be circulated among the members.
Yeah, we're good.
Okay, so with that said, I mean, we are at master plan stage review with the planning board, and so our anticipation was to come here to discuss the site and start the discussion on the landscaping of the site, and with a more sort of robust review by you after we get through, assuming all goes well, after we get through the master plan approval process with the planning board. So with that being said, I think maybe the most efficient use of our time would be to have Greg Coe sort of come online and then just give a quick overview of what his vision is for the property, what the proposed project is. And then Lynn Small can step in and start to fill in some of the details regarding the layout of the buildings, the site itself, grading, parking, and most importantly, stormwater management. Greg, you there?
I have it. Can you hear me? 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 Can you Can you hear me?
We can hear you now.
Okay. Good evening. My name is Greg Coe. I'm a local builder, developer on Aquidneck Island. So my proposal here basically is, a 5-building, we'll call it tradesman / retail type center. This would be, it's a personal investment for me, something I would hold on to. And the 2 buildings along the road frontage, by the proposed drainage there, the vision is sort of a retail type space, more in a contractor sense, maybe a small showroom, warehouse in the back, garage door on the back side of the building, glass front showroom type space facing West Main Road. And then as you continue up the hill, the larger buildings in the back would be more traditional warehouse storage contractor type space.
So Greg, why don't you just quickly describe sort of the grading and topography of the site, and then you can mention some of the conversations that you've had with the abutters which have led to the updated landscaping plan.
Okay, so as you come into the site, you can see by the site plan that it's fairly steep when you first come in. It levels out a bit and then continues uphill, and then sort of the back section of the property, the east section of the property with the 3 larger buildings does open up and flatten out quite a bit. So the vision is the buildings along the main road would sit quite a bit lower. We would flatten the grade of the site to allow, vehicular circulation around those 2 buildings, and then the parking in the front. And then create some sort of retaining wall to make a transition up to the higher level, and then also, level that site as needed to make the grading and drainage work. And with the size of the buildings, we do want a pretty level site. And as far as the abutters go, so I have had some conversations in our due diligence with the abutters in West Passage. I actually spoke to 3 or 4 of them the other day. And they expressed their, some history on the property that I'm learning about, and their sort of list of concerns. So we've been working through that with a landscape architect. And, obviously the big thing that came up was drainage. It's an open site, and I'm sure quite a bit of water runs through there. So we'll be looking at that. And they're also concerned about some screening. So there is a pretty decent buffer that exists, and a large berm. So the houses on West Passage are quite a bit lower than this site with that berm installed. But there isn't a lot of evergreen screening. So we're proposing, in addition to the landscaping that, would be required as part of the project, to sort of fill in that buffer on that berm with an evergreen screen as needed. So, off season, winter time, there's still a nice screen to block the view of the development from the residential side.
Lynn, did you want to step in and give a summary of the project as well from your perspective? And I guess we can field questions from the board thereafter.
Yep, we're at a conceptual level plan, as you all know. This is for the master plan submission. We have 5 buildings. We're going to focus on retail towards the front with a centrally located access off East Main Road. That curb cut exists now. We'll obviously improve it a bit. And then I anticipate that we'll have some drainage on either side of that curb cut so we can control the runoff towards West Main Road. And then as you get deeper into the site, where we can try to get back some of that slope, because this site does have a pretty good grade change across its length. We anticipate picking up some of that grade change on the sides of the buildings and then leveling off a little bit more as you get deeper into the site, where we're expecting to need another stormwater area to protect the residents that are south of the property, because we want to make sure we don't create any adverse impacts for stormwater on their property. We'll also enhance some of the vegetation that's along that side. We do have test holes that were done on this site previously. We found an area towards the back behind building 5 might be the most suitable for a small septic system. We don't anticipate a lot of flow for this site as far as wastewater is concerned, as it's mostly just bathrooms for employees. The retail buildings may have some people come, but it's not the environment that you use the bathroom very often. So we don't expect to need a huge septic system, but we have plenty of space for it back there. I'm anticipating with this project that the stormwater be something that we really have to focus on, even if that means some of these buildings may get a little bit smaller when we do all of the designs. Due to the size of the site and its location, we're going to need a couple permits from the state, and they'll, in their reviews, focus on stormwater as well as erosion control. We'll need a RIPTES permit because we're going to have over an acre of disturbance, and then West Main Road is a state road, so we'll have a DOT physical alteration permit for this application, and that's in addition to the 3-step process we have through the planning board: master, preliminary, and final. And we'll be coming back to this board once we have the engineering designs done, so we can get you a better idea on where we're going to be putting some landscaping and get you some architectural renderings to look at.
When you do the site plan over or modify it, can you do true topo lines for us, calling out elevations? I mean, you just got the lines there, obviously we can see that, but actually what the step is up the hill, I'd like to see that.
I had my volume too low to hear the beginning part of your question. I apologize.
Right, a true topo map calling out the elevation lines. All it is lines for us, and yeah, you can read it, but it'd be nice to see some numbers with those lines.
Are they 1 foot contours or 2 foot?
I believe they're 1 foot right now.
I'm sorry. Is that, I noticed that little building that abuts that residential neighborhood that's going away. Is the driveway staying or is that going?
I believe that that building, if we can get the engineering to work to keep it, we may try to keep that building. It really comes down to how the full design works at the end of the day.
I'm just looking at it in terms of along that south property line, you have like a good buffer going on with like the bigger trees. And it gets really skinny where that driveway is that goes to the existing house. And I was just wondering if the house was going away, if you were getting rid of the driveway, then you could thicken up that buffer for that corner house, because they're like going to be staring at it a little bit more than everyone else, so.
Okay, we'll take that into consideration when we go into the designs. I mean, having 2 curb cuts for a project on West Main is not invaluable, at least for fire, life safety purposes. But the driveway, if that house is demolished, can be reconfigured.
Are you thinking like a vault system or a Cultex system towards the front of the property, similar to what they did on Russo Road? If you remember, they had the concrete containment vaults on both sides of the entrance, because we're looking at this, and this mirrors a little bit the Russo Road development from a few years back, and they're still working on it. They just put in that shell quick loop or whatever it is that came before us a couple months back. So because you've got so much coverage with asphalt, and there's not a lot of impervious surfaces that you're dealing with here. And I counted roughly 91 parking spaces. So if you think about those tradesmen's units too, that's a bathroom for each one of them, plus the other units. So I don't know. I mean, it comes down to you doing the engineering and doing the septic, but in my mind, it's like, it's gonna be a pretty big field once you add it up. Um, I don't know. I know everyone wants to get the max for their property, but I'm not sure that small septic system you have drawn in there is, well, she's got it on the far east side, she has it on that. I've seen one there,
Oh, okay.
yeah, so,
And also with this, the slope of the property, you're gonna need a tank with a pump in it to pump it up to that septic. So you
Yeah,
need
we're
to room
expecting,
for that somewhere.
you're right. We're expecting a pumped septic system on the site. I mean, it's the more suitable test holes that we have for a septic system are at the high end of the site. So we're expecting it'll be a pre-treated and a pumped system. Maybe we need two, it depends on when we get more into the designs and how that lays out. We want to protect them for any vehicular access because we don't want them to get crushed.
Right.
So there's a number of things to think about, and we want to make sure they're not too close to the property line so we can screen the boundaries as well.
Is that existing vegetation on the east side, that's pretty much staying, right? Because I went on Google Earth and there's like a bunch of, looks like a
Oh,
bunch
that's
of
a good point.
deciduous trees, like on the east side.
Yeah, the east side is basically your back property line, right? And we're anticipating on trying to retain as much vegetation as we can in that area. Right now, a lot of the site is kind of a scrubby brush, nothing of substance. Around the perimeter, you start to get some of, your better plants. And if, when we get deeper into the designs, the landscape architect will do a deeper site walk now that we can get back there, and she'll be able to identify any of those larger trees that exist so that we can preserve those.
Yeah, I just was looking on Google Earth and it's, I don't know, as far as with the contours and everything, how much you can see it, but that's basically where the milk farm is for Escobar's on Middle Road. That goes down and that's in the view line of all those houses. So I would definitely just make sure that that stays really thick. Because they have a beautiful view.
We're actually going to take into consideration the existing neighbors on the south side very much. I understand that they've had some issues in the past, and we want to make sure that we don't add to that and we actually help with what they've gone through. So that's an area that Greg has already been talking to some of those people, and we're going to make sure to incorporate those things into the design.
There's a lot of woods on the north side, but on the east side.
Without the grade elevations called out, I was making an assumption that as you move eastward across this property and into the Cottas Field to the east, everything is going uphill. In other words, there's not a low spot right along the sort of the eastern border of your property that is running in any one or the other directions, north or south, that I can tell.
I think it goes from Middle Road and it keeps going.
It's all the way, there's no flat. So,
Yeah, we do have, you can't see the,
Yeah, it's funny, because on that picture, it doesn't look like there's anything on the east side of the back property line, but I thought there was, but maybe not.
so those purple topography lines that you're seeing on the GIS that's in front of you right now, those are 10-foot. So you can see that we're working with a decent grade change, especially in the front.
so retaining wall on building 3 and 4. You've got cars backing in there or backing out. I mean, you're gonna have to do some sort of railing system or bollards or whatever.
Yeah, we plan on making sure, I mean, once we do the grading plan, we'll be able to see better where our grade changes require help.
So I know you don't have your architecturals for this evening, folks, but our design sort of mirror what is on Russo Road, except for S&S Transmissions, that was there, that was an existing building. Sydney's or whatever it's called now, we approved the Shell station recently. It's Aquarium in the back. Then the two Morton buildings, Peter, what's his name that died? The electrician, Pete Reed, Pete Reed passed, so, yeah.
The boat works.
Yeah, both works there. So,
Yeah.
most recent
no, not that,
Well,
yeah, that's all.
They are the Morton buildings, in the style of a large barn, which is very reasonably attractive.
Yeah.
Constraints.
Right. So have that person take in mind our guidelines when she's developing it, so. So our board members, do you have any questions this time before I go to any of others? No. Okay, because I know this is conceptual.
Lighting.
Yeah, lighting, signage, I mean, you know, we'll talk about that once you get a grading plan and show the opening and that. Obviously, you're gonna want signage. You have to have a street number anyways, so lights coming in. The lighting plan has to be added as well for us. So, write a general opinion, knowing that you'll be back. And again, just like the other petitioners, we'll try to work with everybody. The first Monday in July is actually the 4th or the 5th, and that's what's going to be considered a holiday for everybody, so we're not going to meet then. Potentially, we can meet later in the month, depending on the board members and the availability of the town hall and the team equipment, but for now, we're gonna talk through. So at this point, I'd like to open up the floor to any abutters that are here that would like to speak to the petitioners' petition tonight. So please step forward and give us your name. Name and address. And address.
Sure. Is this on? So I'm Bruce Familietti. I'm at 98 West Passage Drive. And I just want to let you know about the history of this development thus far. When the lot was originally cleared of trees and swales were built on the eastern border of the property and the south border of the property, they were lined with granite and functioned reasonably for a couple of years. And somewhere around 3 years ago, 2018, the developer filled in the swales, got a bulldozer, filled in the swales, and constructed an illegal berm, according to planning board, and they issued a cease and desist order. So the property currently has a cease and desist order because of the illegal berm that's about 5 feet high. So the result of the berm was that the normal drainage patterns were interrupted. And the potato field owned by Mr. David Cotter, it's not uncommon to have a full acre of water that's 18 inches deep at the lowest point and goes all the way out about 200 by 200 feet. When you do the calculations, there's about 120,000 gallons that accumulate in that field. And it creates a habitat for mosquitoes and more frogs than you can, biblical level of frogs. So, so the situation is that I understand that the engineers are speaking about the drainage for the existing site, but the real issue is the 120,000 gallon pond that borders my property, 44222, Mr. Bill Nolan at 44223, and Mr. William Kahn at 44221. And then when it spills over, it affects everyone down the the hill with a new brook that drains into their yard. So the issue the abutters have is not so much the drainage on the parcels of 44-7 and 44A, but it's the illegal berm, the large 120,000 gallon pond, and the drainage of on the land of all the people down the hill from the illegal berm. And like I said, there's a cease and desist order for construction currently. So my fellow neighbors probably can add to that.
Thank you. If anyone would like to come up and speak, give your name and address, please.
And just a point of correction, the notice of violation was submitted by the building official, Garrett Danes, January 28, 2019.
The building inspector.
May I approach? I can give
Yes,
you,
sure, please.
you can have this. This is a copy. We got this before we have request. That is the violation. It was
Okay, right. So Mike has a record of it, everything.
I spoke with Garrett last week and he said he's elevating the association without a certain or enforce that. So I don't know.
What was your name?
Make a statement to that effect there.
Yeah. I didn't get your name.
I don't know if we did. He was talking about it.
You can couch it just like.
Okay. My name is William Com. I live at 108 West Passage Drive.
William,
Com, K-O-M-M. So my main concern is the retention pond that Bruce estimates at 120,000 gallons, and I might say that it might even be more than that. The idea that you can manage your stormwater by stopping upstream stormwater from entering your property just doesn't seem reasonable to me. I spoke with Garrett Ames last week, and he had told me that he's in the process of referring this matter to the town attorney for enforcement of the violation. I just would hope that the planning board would have the wisdom not to allow that as part of the design of a stormwater management system, to have a retention pond on someone else's property. That's all.
Thank you for your comments. Yeah, what was your just again?
108 West Passage.
Go on. Hi, yes, please step up. And your name, sir?
My name is Dale Yatesburg, and I live at 70 West Passage Drive, the 44224 on the map there. And I think Bruce really summed it up nicely. We as a neighborhood have been abused by the current ownership for the last handful of years. And Lynn and Greg, I appreciate your comments. It seems like you're much more open to understanding the concerns of the neighborhood and working to address those. I don't have anything further to add. Like I said, I think Bruce summed it up well. But my question for you two would be, are you willing to schedule time formally? It sounds like you've met with a couple of the abutters, but set up time formally on the property with the abutters to review our concerns and come up with something that works for everybody.
Refer to Lynn and to Greg. We need to.
Yeah, that's actually something we were hoping to get done in the next couple of weeks. I was given the, let me get the name here. I've been in back and forth with a Jim Banks.
Okay.
Look at the correspondence.
The best I can say to try, I think it's a great idea, first off. I think anytime any development goes in and goes butters, like commercial to residential, there's always concerns. There was with Russo Road, we were able to work those out with the developer. It wasn't over drained, it was mostly. I don't know how to get together. I mean, it's kind of up to you guys. I mean, if we're available, I'd like to doing too.
Yeah.
And I think our board members would take time out of their day for a meeting, so.
There was a meeting last fall with prior ownership and prior council when there was a different project. So I think something similar to that, where with some advance notice to meet on site and for the
Yeah.
board to join and the abutters to join, I think it'd be productive.
The one issue that we could have is with the forum, board members,
Out of an open space
Yeah.
notification, right?
Yeah.
That's true. I think independently, we can, it's okay with Greg, who's the owner. I mean, for us to walk onto the property, three of us, probably Nick would be interested, Cindy, she's on vacation. I'd like to see it. I'd like to walk to the back of Kata's property and take a look. But certainly we would need your permission. Right?
So I'm not yet the owner of the property. I'm the applicant. So I'm in my due diligence period here and trying to get a handle on all these things that are coming up. So, but we can certainly make arrangements to have a meeting out there and look at everything. That's not a problem.
With the butters, correct. Yeah.
Okay.
You'll reach out to them by mail or however. I know you don't have all their email addresses or phone numbers. So.
I don't. I was given a name of Dave Croston, who I was told would get in touch with me and then help coordinate a meeting with everyone who was interested. So that is in process. I haven't made any headway yet this week, but I'm hoping to, and then hopefully we can put something together to get some progress on this.
And Greg, my name is Dale Yatesburg. I'll find out. I'll be able to get in touch with you as well. You'll hear from me.
Okay, that sounds great.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, yes, step up, please, and address me.
Mark Roderick, 73 West Passage Drive.
Roberts?
Yes, Rodericks, 73 West Passage. Just a little back history on that property. I had a very good neighbor that lived there before this was cleared. And that entrance and exit where the curb cut is, I would say probably the most dangerous spot in Portsmouth. And I'm not exaggerating. When you come out because of the curve, it's super dangerous. And because West Passage, there's like a hump. With that there, it's going to be very serious. Let's just say we get past that. Let's get past the drainage problem. Let's say that clears up. Maybe there's a light added so there's not accidents. Let's get to that this might look like Russo Road. And this is where my comment is. Is that the best we can do? Have we learned anything from that development and those neighbors? Because that is one ugly development. It's an eyesore. And that whole area is becoming like that. And I don't blame the developer if you let him put huge buildings there in people's backyard. Of course, they're going to do it. But I just think the bar should be a little bit higher. And I don't mean to be critical, but when you drive down that road and you see Russo Road and you know you're going to be sandwiched between that and another one, I felt like it was my responsibility to come and say, this isn't people's backyards. They look at this. Their families have picnics in the backyard facing these giant buildings, storage units. Workmen, they call them workman centers with trucks coming in and out. I just think Portsmouth can do a lot better. I know that we can do a lot better, but they won't do better if you let them go. And I thought the building cap might help, but now it's just a bunch of big buildings that don't add up to the building cap. So where did the building cap get us if now you can do 5 buildings? So that's my food for thought, that whole area It's not going well. And if we continue on this route, that whole area is just going to look just horrible. So I appreciate that you're the design review and that it's with your guidance what we'll look at over there. So I'm hoping that like you might ask for a little bit better than Rousseau Road. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next meeting will let you know when we can convene.
We do still, we have
I'm sorry, the submitter's online.
yeah, we have one person on Zoom. And again, if you want to make public comment, use the raise hand function of the Zoom app. No comment at this point. So first, it'll be Court Chappelle. Go ahead, Court.
Can you hear me now? Hi, Court Chappelle. I'm here on behalf of Dave Cotta. I'm not really here to opine on the concept and the plan itself. I think it's a little preliminary to look at the buildings, but I was merely going to bring the attention to the board that which the West Passage neighbors have brought in. The history is that there's a lot of water and it comes off Dave Cotta's fields. And despite the fact it's his water, traditionally it ran down on that southeast corner over into a very substantial drainage system that ran down towards West Main, into the West Main system, I presume, Lynn would know, and eventually I'm sure into the Navy system. We were working certainly with Dale Yatesburg and a number of the neighbors when this happened. We got in contact with Dave Cotta, who seeks to be a good neighbor. We got in contact with Mr. Russo, and in fairness to Greg and Russ, I don't think they knew much about it. I was dealing with Andrew Galvin and a prior developer. And Mr. Cotta, at his expense, using the resources of the Farm Bureau, calculated some engineering on what happened to his field when a 5-foot berm that used to block all that water and a drainage system that used to take all that water was blocked. And I think those are pretty accurate numbers, that it is literally a large pond now that is created where one was not there before. And when that pond gets deep, it seeps through the wall and goes certainly across the neighbors' yards. I know I have pictures of the Yatesburg sports court looking like you could literally kayak down it. So I think Lynn has a challenging job to not only handle the water on the amount of impervious surface put forth with the pavement and the roofs as presented, but knowing that there is a volume of severe magnitude that is now built up. They are correct that the building inspector issued a cease and desist when the water was blocked. And there has not been litigation on the blocking of that water because Mr. Galvin and the other developer were working with Mr. Cotta and the neighbors in an attempt to resolve it. So I do think as long as everybody stays open-minded and goes through some of the plans that have been put together by the Farm Bureau. Lynn, there was talk about even a large retention pond up in that corner that may have a spillover, and seeking permission to grab an easement between a couple of the landowners and tying it into the West Passage Drive system. And that was going to have to be put through Rhode Island, through Portsmouth Public Works, to make sure the sizing of the pipes in West Passage Drive could take any of it as part of the diversion to help the neighbors. So Mr. Cotta is in full agreement that he stands by his commitment to utilize some of his land to solve this problem, and hopefully some of the developer's land to solve this problem, and not merely put it all on his corner and lose 2 acres. But I don't think that's really for this board. I think it's more for the planning board until we meet again. Thank you.
Thanks, Court.
And next, Robin Youngkin, if you could just give your name and address.
Hello, this is Robin Youngkin. I'm at 49 West Passage Drive. Can you hear me?
Yes, gotcha.
Okay. I would like to reiterate what my sister Lark said. I'm on the south side of West Passage, so I'm actually not affected by the runoff. However, I do feel that I have to speak up for the neighborhood because we're being bombarded on both sides of West Passage. On one side with the proposal of a solar farm, and on the north side with this proposal, which right now it might be a little bit too early to comment on, but I'm really concerned about how many storage units there would be there, how many stores, what the design of the building would look like, where else Mr. Coe has built on Aquidneck Island, hopefully not on Russo Road, which I agree with Lark is an eyesore and it detracts from West Main Road. I think that the town really needs to put on the brakes in terms of reckless development on the west side. And I just want to read this short passage. It says, compatible land use practices can be positive and welcome in communities when they respect the tradition and character of the place. Portsmouth is committed to protecting its quality of life. Land available for development on Aquidneck Island is a scarce resource. The quality and character of the community is dependent upon the quality and character of the development that is allowed to occur. Poorly planned and executed projects detract from the character and value of adjacent properties, while well-maintained, well-planned developments enhance the character, quality of life, and value of the surrounding properties. Once built, communities must live with the results for generations, whether they are successful or not. And those are not my words. Guess what? These are your words, not mine. I took them directly from the Design Review Board guidelines that are posted on the town's website and are placed there to reassure the townspeople that you, the Portsmouth officials, have their best interest at heart. And I hope you take that into consideration. I have faith that you will take it into consideration, but I feel that I just have to remind people of what we're facing right now in Portsmouth. That's about it. Thank you.
Is there anybody else like on the line that would like to speak?
Again, last chance to get public comment on this item. Use the raise hand function on the Zoom app, and if you're called in, please dial *6, raise your hand.
Going on. Okay, I don't think there's anybody coming in. So thank you for bringing this conceptual. We know that some work has to be done. Bring it back to our board, and I'll kind of leave it at that because there's quite a bit of work. You've got architectural, you've got drainage, you've got signage, you've got lighting. They've got to deal with the state. There's a lot to this project, as we know, and so we look forward. If we could schedule something, I don't know. We'd have to wait. Mike, what do you think? We'll never make July 5th, so yeah, and it's a holiday, and we're not doing that. So our next meeting would be in August, which is first Monday, is Monday, August 2nd. That kind of looks like we have a special meeting. I think we should, the first petitioner in this one, let's do August 2nd.
Yeah, we get.
Yeah, that gives everybody enough time to, represent and make sense. Town halls open, or, town council chambers are open.
It should, we have, I think we're scheduled, so we would have the first Monday. of the month.
Yeah, I know there were special meetings.
That's true. Yeah, but we do have a second account of Zoom account that we can use. If there's a
Mr. Chairman, if I could just get clarification, as you discuss meeting schedules, the planning board had scheduled a special meeting on July 14th for this project as well as others. So I'm just looking for clarification. Are we suggesting that we'll be back? I was under the impression we'd be back before you after the master plan stage with the planning board as we head towards preliminary, the preliminary stage. So maybe just so we can get an understanding as to what your expectation is to have us back before you.
You're correct, Russell, with the sequence of review.
Okay, great, thanks.
The 14th is planning, right, Mike?
Yeah.
So it would be Monday the 12th.
Well, they would go, they can go.
They can go planning then back.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's okay, that's even, yeah, because I think, Lynn, this is gonna take some work on your part with engineering. I mean, I don't wanna, we don't wanna rush this. I wanna give you enough time to come up with a plan, a real drainage plan, a real site plan.
Right. I mean, we still have to go before the planning board to get their feelings about the project. And then if Greg wants to continue with the project, then he'll close. Like I said earlier, he doesn't own it yet. So there's some time. Yeah, I don't think we're going to be back in front of you. Earliest would be August.
Okay.
Okay, it might be September. We have a good amount of engineering to do for this project.
The fact that you have all those deciduous trees in the front, like big trees, is very important. So definitely keep those in there. Yeah. I mean, I feel like most of the projects, I wish they did have trees in front of them. I feel like a lot of them go through and there's no space for trees, and I try to beg people to put trees in. So just the fact that there's trees along the front makes a big difference. Just for me. I think it's important for the people, in this town.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, look what's happened so far on West Neighbor. I agree.
Larger tree presence closer to West.
Yeah. I mean, I wish we could make the government, that solar farm, that we could make them put trees up. I don't know how we go about that, but that's a nice one.
Since Russo Road is also approved, we've adopted or amended our subdivision regs to include street trees.
Right.
For all.
Yeah. And also DePaul Diesel, which used to be an auto body chop shop years ago, and then SNS Transmissions was the existing building. If that's it, then we can move on to our next petition. I thank everybody that called in and everybody that came to town hall and to our petitioners. Thank you for presenting.
Thank you.
Okay, let me know when you're ready, Mike.
Where are we going from now?
I agree. Naomi.
That's the one that's probably on the low.
No, it's the one behind the Patriot Control.
Oh, okay.
It is.
It's safe and it's with the president of the Denali Power LLC.
Okay. So, let me know when you're ready, Mike. It looks like you do. Okay, thank you. So we'll move on to our third applicant tonight. It's a ground mounted solar energy system. Before us tonight is conceptual plan review. Namali Power LLC, Rhode Island, is the applicant, and 22340 West Main Realty are the owners proposing 1.3 kilowatt or megawatt, sorry, a large ground-mounted photovoltaic array of eastern portion on 2340. It's also identified as lot or EP50 lot 6. So who would like to speak to that petition tonight, please?
So, Mr. Chairman, this is Edward Sapin. I'm one of the principals of Namali Power, and I'd be happy to speak to it. Also, Lynn Small is the engineer for the project, and we've prepared a little PowerPoint presentation, which includes the site layout, which, if it's okay with the board, we would be happy to run through to give you an overview of the project and the design.
Yeah, could you speak just a little bit louder for the board? I don't know if it's on our end or your end.
Oh, okay, certainly. I apologies. So can you hear me better now?
Yes.
Okay, apologies. So I was just saying that we had prepared a PowerPoint presentation just to give you an overview of the project and including the design, which I'd be happy to walk through. And Lynn also, as the project engineer, will address the design as well, if that's okay with the board.
Go ahead.
Okay, so let me just share my screen. Bear with me one moment. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes, you can.
Okay, great. Question is, can I see my screen? But it's a little bit of a lag on this end. So first of all, thank you to the board for allowing us to present this project. Just as a brief overview, Namali is a developer and investor in the renewable energy sector. Our principals have been building projects in the solar sector for over 10 years across the US and across the world. We've basically run investment funds and have also worked in solar groups for very large as well as very small investors. I personally ran the project development group at BP Solar for a number of years. And my colleagues have a background in engineering for large groups such as Lewis Berger and others. So overall, we've done roughly about 100 megawatts of solar projects across the United States that are operating as around the world. And we really do try very hard to work with communities to make sure that we are aware of local concerns and like to be good corporate citizens. So that's a little bit about Namali. Speaking specifically about the project on West Main Road, as our application says, as we call it, the Namali RI 101 project is a 1.5 megawatt DC, roughly 1.3 megawatt AC project at the intersection of West Main Road and Union Street. It's currently unused commercially zoned land, and it's set back from West Main Road behind the Patriot Petroleum station that's there. The project was awarded a renewable energy growth certificate by Narragansett Electric and National Grid. So it has a 20-year power purchase agreement attached to it. And we've also worked with National Grid, separate group within National Grid, to negotiate and sign an interconnection agreement so that the project can be connected to the electricity grid. On the design front, we've worked with Northeast Engineers and Lewis Berger to create a 50% design. That includes expected landscaping, setbacks, and other community conscious features, which Lynn will discuss in a moment. The project design has also been reviewed by the fire department and other safety authorities. And we are working through permitting for the project, of course, with yourselves in the town. And then at the state level, the project has received many of its state level permits already. And we're working towards fixing and addressing the remaining permits for the town. So we're very focused on working with Portsmouth, and we are going to be engaging a landscape architect as well as we move forward in the process. The project has been submitted to the planning board, and although it has quite advanced design, it's at the master plan stage, and we're looking forward to your feedback from this meeting today. So with that, I'll turn it over to Lynn to talk about the design and the preliminary landscaping plan. Lynn?
Yeah, can you unshare your screen? Because I think
Sure.
they may benefit from the site plan. Mike, are you gonna show yours or do you want me? Okay, cool. So we're actually a little bit farther along. This is master plan level for the solar field project. We're a little bit farther along in the design work because we've actually done the state permitting. So we have the drainage ironed out. So we'll be able to answer a few more of your questions. We do not have landscaping on board yet because that's not a requirement for the state permit. So just keep that in mind with the questions. This is behind the Patriot Petroleum site, which is on the corner of Union and West Main Road. We have their septic system, you can see kind of out in the field there. In that area kind of drains down towards West Main Road. The site drains mostly down towards West Main Road, but right past that septic field, it crests and it drains towards the reservoir. There's a small portion of the lot that was pulled out after the Patriot Petroleum went through the planning and approval process, and it was added to a small lot that the water department had, which is on Union Street. That project has been built now and exists. We'll be sharing their entrance off of Union Street. So if we go to the next slide, this shows you a little bit more how that project will work together. So we have the curb cut off Union Street, which you already see today. This is the one that is used to access the water department site, because we always knew something would go back here, but we're near a watershed protection district. So we wanted a very passive use. So a solar field, you really can't get much more passive than that. I guess there's no water, no sewer. And to offset some of the stormwater, we're proposing a meadow type grass field, which will basically be low maintenance. It'll allow for, birds and butterflies. I don't know why I said that, but they'll be in there. And because it's not mowed as often, you have a reduced runoff rate. So your stormwater system ends up substantially less, even though it's currently a vegetated site. We do have some stormwater features for this area. Most of them are a result of having to provide your access around the solar field just for, long-term accessibility, mostly for, life safety. There should be very little, if any, maintenance needs for the project. It does have a perimeter fencing. We are intending on leaving all of the existing vegetation along the property lines in place and further as you get towards the reservoir. Some of that area will be supplemented to help with any screening in areas where it's necessary. But all in all, the project is hopefully will be placed in there with very little visual impact and a lot of environmental benefit having this type of passive renewable resource developed.
The other two petitions that have been before us, Lynn, on West Main Road, things that they did that we went along with guidelines on these solar fields, the fencing to allow animals to pass, raised.
It's hard to hear you unless you're speaking.
So on fencing, the solar farm will be fenced, correct?
Yes, the solar project will be fenced. And you intend on using the fencing that allows small animals to pass and repass.
Exactly. So that, and then where it's visible, we've also suggested for screening to use that green mesh within the fence as well as landscaping to cut down on, the visibility of the project. That's always something that comes up. Just that this is new. This whole concept for our town is fairly new. So we're treading along, but we've taken the advice of the town council and that's to what they want in the ordinance, and that's kind of what we're going after right now. Board members.
In your statement, you did say you are going to strive to have a minimal environmental impact. Yet my driving down the eastern side of that property line shows a very heavily wooded area. And most of that is over a ledge. It's fairly shallow soil level, so it probably doesn't fall under our purview because we're talking about revegetating. Should the project go, what would we want to have for revegetating to try and cover up or screen the proposed solar site? But I'm a little concerned about what to get lost in terms of mature trees all along that eastern, what I'm calling the eastern border right there. And so I would take a little bit of issue if the overlay of the plan for all the solar panels seems like you'd have to lose an awful lot of fairly mature forested land for the installation. If there's any way that, should this proceed further, the existing borders that have the trees be kept as much as possible, that would, my sensibility, big plus. I understand they can cast shadows, and I understand that there's negative input in terms of solar gain, but charter with having to try and maintain the rural and pastoral flavor of Portsmouth, I would say that loss of vegetation, that massive vegetation loss would be a detriment. My opinion.
Leslie?
I mean, Nick and I walked what we could there, and from petroleum side, Patriot, I mean, it does look like there's what I saw, I didn't see what you saw, but I saw a lot of birch trees, and there's definitely a lot of trees back there. So I mean, whether you cut back on this on the west side and add some more trees, but I mean, I think that whole west side needs to be buffered with like a big, dense area of like deciduous trees with a mix of evergreens and shrubs. Also on it's the where right past the bending, if you go down Union, there's two houses right across from Jefferson Lane. And now they're going to have this solar farm behind them. I feel bad for them because they're just like, bombarded everywhere. But, I mean, that's definitely gonna have to be screened heavily. I mean, no one's gonna wanna see that driving down, even, you're gonna see it on West Main Road. If you don't buffer it. So,
And Union.
yeah, and Union Street.
Signage is minimal, just something that identifies it. I'm sure you'll have a gate for service people and that sort of thing. That's really our only sort of purview until you come back with us with complete landscaping. That calls out everything. And again, we have topography lines, contours. Okay, so let me do this. Let me open up the floor to any interested parties or butters that would like to speak to the petitioner, please.
Again, if you're using the Zoom app, you can raise your hand by using the raise hand button to be called on. And if you're calling in, you can dial *6. And just please state your name clearly and your address for the record. Christian, you're first.
Hi, my name is Christian Sullivan, 799 Street. Can everyone hear me all right?
Could you repeat? You kind of broke up for us.
All right. So my name is Christian Sullivan, 799 Union Street is my residence. Everyone hear me all right now?
Yeah, I got you. Perfect. Yeah.
Okay, so, well, where to begin? I'll try to keep it as short as possible, I suppose, here. I've made several efforts to try to purchase this to conserve exactly what everyone is talking about here. Little background on me. I'm fairly young, 32, born and raised in Port, Rhode Island. Father was a fisherman. I have background in landscape architecture and horticulture. I own the 15-acre plot to the west. And obviously, I'm sorry, to the east, not the west. But, the sun comes up over there and right over the reservoir, and you can imagine what's going to happen when it hits that solar array. I know there's been some talk of type of trees and the type of woodland that is in there. I'm pretty familiar with it. It's a massive, densely forested and largely native species. You've got Prunus sorrentina, Coniferous virginiana. To the untrained eye, you'd look at these and you'd say, well, they're fairly grown. They're not too grown, but they're fairly mature. They sit on top of a shale slope. So root structures take much longer to basically take hold, stabilize soil, uptake water. I mean, any way you dice this up, whether you've got the views from West Main Road, Union Street, the two small residences, my strip looking up, I see the lower elevation. I mean, it's a massive detriment to the watershed. You can see half the project lies right within the watershed itself. Sitting on shale, the idea that a meadow, I know the engineer spoke of butterflies. I actually have some extensive experience with butterflies. We do a lot of that. And although that would seem like a good use for habitat at first glance, that fence that completely will envelop a solar array prevents massive amounts of ecological biodiversity from migrating from that habitat to the water on the other side of my property. Herds of deer, turkeys. We're also involved in the falconry program in Rhode Island and the Audubon Society. So we are pretty fitted with the raptor populations, and everyone loves raptors. Everyone is amazed by them, and their populations are obviously in decline. We've got documented, obviously, the osprey. They're at a little higher altitude to the other segments, but red tails, kestrels, coopers, mated pairs of great horned owls, barred owls, you name it. Now, small game can pass through that slightly, but a solar array in a meadow does not provide the same kind of habitat that a densely wooded area provides, not in the slightest. It just can't, and it doesn't. You need the whole thing to work. I could go on through the privacy slats, through those already smaller openings in the fences. You're limiting access yet again. I really don't see how this could work. It's protecting Portsmouth's water, not just mine, and it's not just the water runoff itself. It's truly the biodiversity of a diminishing town. I mean, I don't know how to explain it. I wasn't born with incredibly deep pockets. I'm an entrepreneur, and I am not anti-solar in the slightest. I think it's great. But the moment you look at a project like this and realize that it requires complete deforestation to produce, you really have to ask yourself. I made the decision a few years ago when I purchased my property, which was in the conceptual phase of the drawings and stuff for a 15-house subdivision. I saved it. I'm restoring the farmhouse, working towards it with a big stress on sustainable land management, how to educate people and do something like that. If something like this kind of project pushes through, the message that it conveys to people my age and other residents, I mean, I could have went to Tiverton, I could have went to Little Compton, got a much larger parcel of land, done what I'm trying to do, but I felt a moral obligation to stay on the island, my home, the morals, the beliefs, everything that's very important to me. I'd like to raise a family here. I'd like to see other people try to do the things that I do. But when I look upwards from my property and see a forest completely annihilated and having a close and intimate relationship with them, I can't undo the things that I know. The biodiversity is extensive. So it starts to, make me wonder, my knowledge, my hard worked money, and do I put in a solar array even closer to the watershed? Because why not? I mean, that's really what it would seem like the way to go here. If the town is not going to stand behind something like this, then who is, and why should I? It's just me. I don't really know how else to dice it up, but I think we got to ask ourselves, what are we doing here? And that's pretty much all I've got to say for now. So.
Christian, thank you for your comments to the board and to petitioners tonight and the folks in the audience that were here. Anybody else on the line before I ask for anybody in town council chambers?
We have an Azure. Azure, if you could provide your name, your full name, and your address for the record.
Hi, my name is Jesse McHugh, 48 Sweet Farm Road. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah, what was the address again? I'm sorry.
My name is Jesse McHugh, 48 Sweet Farm Road. And my question is, how many more solar arrays do we have in the pipeline coming up? I know now that there's 2 sitting on West Main. There's a bunch already put up. There's this one coming in here, which is the Namali company, which having been to Africa many times, I know that word means wealth. Namali is a Swahili word for wealth. This is an investment company. No one who owns or works for this company lives in Portsmouth. None of the money that comes from this company will go to Portsmouth. So we've kind of set the town up where solar can come in very easily and really do some deforestation, re-landscape the entire island and make it into something that not many people are going to want to live in much longer. But my main question really is, how many more of these, if you guys know, how many more solar arrays are in the pipeline?
As far as I know, we're hearing one more petition this evening. I don't know of any others. Mike shaking his head, he doesn't know of any others right now.
Okay.
Always be more.
Yeah.
There could be more, and certainly as a citizen living here, I'm not particularly happy with the way the federal government put in their solar farm there. They could have done some screening and done it better.
Yeah, but that's not you guys. That's not the town. That's the military doing what they do.
Yeah, we have no oversight of the federal government, nor do we have oversight of like the state. So when they built that transfer station, fuel station on Boyd's Lane, you know,
Right.
and everything, not up to us, unfortunately. So we're limited to what the town controls, and that's it. So your point is taken, and I only know of the next petitioner, and that's all I can address to you, Jesse.
Okay, so there's this, is there any more tonight besides this one?
No, yeah, there's one more. We're hearing one after this.
So is that's gonna, so there's 9 in total for the town of Portsmouth so far, not including the Navy.
No.
And I'm not giving you guys a hard time. I'm just, it's really hard to find out. It's hard to research how or where the solar farms are, who owns the companies, so on and so forth. I mean, it took me 45 minutes to find any names attached to the company that is Namali.
Yeah, no, it's, they're, the ones that people have been before us, before the petitioners have been LLCs. And we don't delve into the legal owners of the buildings.
I got you. Okay, well, thanks very much. I appreciate your time.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so if there's nobody else online, I'll let the people in town council chamber speak next. And then we're talking to William.
Right.
Tom,
Yes.
go ahead, sir.
In looking at this plan, it appears to me that the setback of 50 feet is from the border to the solar panel. I think the ordinance needs, I would expect the setback would be from the border to any portion of the solar farm, be it the service road, the fence, what have you. So by going right to the panel, they can put the road and then they put the fence. The fence can be 30 feet from the property line. Am I correct that the fence is 30 feet from the property line?
So what we've got is from the property line to the panel itself is 50 feet.
Yeah. So I would say setback is to any portion of the solar farm, which would include the fence and any road. The state template for the ordinance, which was largely used to develop our ordinance, says that the 50 feet is the no-cut zone, and I would maintain that you cannot install a fence in an area where you're not allowed to cut. You cannot put a road in where you are not allowed to cut. So that's my first point. My second point, that a large portion of this farm is in the watershed of the Lawton Valley Reservoir, which delivers drinking water to the entire island, not just Portsmouth. So my question is, does Portsmouth have the sole authority to approve development in the watershed of the reservoir that serves the entire island?
Unfortunately, that's not our decision, and I can't even think that Mike would know the answer.
There may be
to
other
that.
stakeholders who would have an interest in this development.
I'm sure that Newport Waterworks has a very big interest in that.
It's so, you know, in summary, not every parcel is suitable for solar. And this is beginning to appear like this is the case here.
So there are watershed protection districts that we have. We have 2 different ones.
Yeah.
Plan,
So they avoided the more severe
the
one.
more- Yes,
Yeah.
correct. And they can develop within those zones as permitted by the zoning ordinance.
As viewed by Portsmouth. I wonder if the Newport Water Company would feel the same way. We'll never know. Yes.
It's a bigger question.
It's a bigger question that we can
give you an answer to.
put answers
You
to.
could always.
You could always.
Yeah.
I do know the Newport County Water District does get notified, and they did submit written correspondence on the Patriot Petroleum, so I would anticipate that they do something similar.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else in the audience would like to speak?
I really wish I wasn't coming up, but I feel compelled to come up. I did search and I looked under just things that other solar problems near watersheds. And I did find several things with several lawsuits for contamination. I guess it's questionable whether there's lead in the solar panels. Some people say there are, solar companies say there aren't. I know that they're almost impossible to dispose of. After 20 years, somebody else, this is going to be kicked down the road for someone else to deal with. So you're putting off a problem by adding more solar to the town. And I have to agree with Christian, who bought some land to try to save a part of Portsmouth like I did. At some point, you ask yourself, am I the fool for not putting solar where I am? Is that the only option that we have in Portsmouth? It certainly looks like that's the message that's being sent to farmers. People like Chase Farms who farmed and now are all solar. And I don't begrudge them. They worked hard and they're older and they want to retire. But it looks like it's speeding towards you without any other choice. And it's surrounding neighborhoods. It's taking trees down. I don't know about you, but I find it ironic that people want to clear woodland to put up solar when there's so many other options. And even in this town, there's other options. I mean, I'd like to see us move in a direction that showed people there were other options than taking acreage of trees down. It's frustrating. It's aggravating. It's upset my neighbors and the people in the town. And it just seems to progress along. Storage units, solar farms. Once again, we are better than that. I know we are. I've lived here my whole life. It just, I mean, honestly, I could break into tears because I see that it's coming and there is no stopping it. And it's so frustrating. And all I can say is, I'm like begging you, put the brakes on the solar, put the brakes on stupid things like storage units, and make the town important and beautiful and pastoral. And my sister read what the town is about. And we are so far off that grid that I can barely recognize those words. I'm sorry, you got a lot of work and you've got a lot of responsibility, and I do not envy you. And I appreciate that you come in here and that you listen and that you do this. And I hope that you'll keep it in mind. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to speak tonight? Mike, did anyone else raise their hand on Zoom?
Again, from the last call here, if you'd like to give public comment, you can use raise hand button to raise hand. And if you're calling in, you can dial *6.
Yeah.
I have a question, Ed. I don't know if you know this offhand, but that whole landfill dumping issue was brought to my attention. I know this is off topic, but do we know that there isn't any toxic problem with the water that hits solar panels and goes into our water? Like there isn't any problem?
So
Watershed?
Sure. So I'll be very open. I'm not an engineer by training. I've done a lot of work on solar projects that have been operating for a while in various different places. And I've never heard of any toxicity from water hitting solar panels and coming off of it. The panels are sealed. And so I've never heard of that being an issue with the groundwater. We also generally, while the project's operating over the years that it operates, test the soil from time to time to make sure everything's okay. And I've never seen an issue personally. I'm not sure, Lynn, if you can comment further. Okay.
No, I don't have any information to add to that.
Okay.
This is just one of the lawsuits that are in progress for the wishes.
Okay.
It's a settled
This
lawsuit.
this pertains to Williamsburg, Pennsylvania. The lawsuit that one of the rights butters or members gave me. So the board will share this. I'm not Amy, but I'm not sure it pertains. If any, it's a different state.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, I think if you were to hand that to the planning board, that's probably a more
Yeah.
appropriate board than the design review board.
But the town did sue the solar company for contaminating and we did win. Still, you know, it's just information.
we're glad to read it.
Yeah, but I think that you should present it to the planning board.
So, anything?
The one of the questions, which is the esoteric question about the 20-year lifespan site system itself, what happens downstream, as Mark mentioned earlier, they were just passing off these systems, where do they go, how do they get decommissioned? But then again, it's not. It's
Yeah.
not decommissioning
Is part of the solar ordinance, there's a procedure following that.
Yes, but in the bigger picture, the pieces that are on the tail, which are usually composites, where does that all go? And that 700-year lifespan breakdown. So that's not for us tonight.
Yeah, most likely.
Get to do it.
God knows what. So if there's nothing else on this petition, I'd like to move on to the next petition. I'll let Mike pull it up on the screen. If folks want to stay up, we're more than happy to listen to the next one. So why not? Make an evening of it, right?
Yeah, that's smart. It's a happening spot.
Beast reality TV, so.
If you enjoyed it enough, you're gonna be recruited for a board, so.
I mean, I totally agree with the fact that this whole like getting rid of forests, putting solar is BS, you know, I mean, but like at least this one that's coming up, it's an existing concrete slab, and that makes sense. Or if it was like a field,
Or roof.
right, yeah, yeah, I totally.
There's lots of opportunity too.
Yeah.
I think we need to get the town center, committee needs to get back on board. And whatever other board is missing, that I feel like, you know, there's something missing where, you know, I mean, we can only say make it better, and then it's up to the planning board to say yes or no, right? And, but I feel like I totally agree with you, like,
I mean,
you
while the
know,
town is stumbling along, the solar companies are running full speed.
yeah.
And like.
I think we're getting off topic.
Yeah, so because we need to keep it moving, it's
Yeah.
5:09 and our petitioners are waiting, so I'd like to
Sure.
start the fourth petition, which is a large ground-mounted solar energy system. It's located on West Shore Road, West Shore Solar, excuse me. Yeah. And Carnegie Trails LLC is the owner. And the old Alvin facility, which used to be the Pearson Yachts facility before that, is in a heavy industrial zoning district. So if there's anybody on the line that would like to speak to this petition, I think I see Court. Would you like to speak first?
Sure. I have Lynn Small with me as well. I'm here a little bit unique today because I am a part owner and I am also the attorney for Kearsarge Energy, who's proposing this site. I hear a lot about solar in the last couple of minutes, and I feel compelled to tell you a little bit about it. I'm the one guilty of writing the solar ordinance. Cy, if you recall, property very near your house is why we needed a solar ordinance. I was the attorney for an energy company on Jepson Lane that got a solar array approved. That matter was appealed to the Superior Court. Judge Van Coogan stated that, I should step back a little bit. Our zoning ordinance never had a specific line item for solar. It was in 1964 when it was written. It didn't have one for cell towers. It didn't have one for a number of things that have come down the pike. But what happened was we had a line that said, if there is an analogy that can be drawn, the zoning board under a special use permit should look at the analogy. And that was a residential zone that was proposed. And the analogy, according to me, was a utility or a farm, because they were like greenhouses that were fairly innocuous as zoning uses, because they did not have any traffic, they did not have any noise, and they did not have any smell. A prominent local lawyer, Mr. Lynch, representing a neighbor, said it was more akin to manufacturing because you were manufacturing electricity. And the good Judge Van Coogan said, that's a nice little debate you two are having. But the truth is, only the town council can decide what goes in our town. And a zoning ordinance that says look to an analogous use is not constitutional. So we needed a solar ordinance. I do not believe there is a run on solar. I believe there was an estoppel put out that there was no solar in calendar years 2018, 19, and 20, because nobody could file unless there was an ordinance. One gentleman who was one of the pending and most controversial solar field on West Shore Road across from Melville School tried to file as a manufacturer, but basically I think was stopped when the zoning board says we need an ordinance. The project you just heard was the one who hired my office to actually pen the solar ordinance. And then we went to the town council. We went to the planning board for probably 3 or 4 different workshops. We met with Gary Crosby and Mike Asciola, your planning and zoning department. We had the model ordinance from the state of Rhode Island and the governor's directives. We had before us 16 ordinances from the other cities and towns to compare and write them to. And it is not an ordinance that is pro-solar. It is an ordinance that allows in most zones to send to a discretionary board under a special use permit to see whether or not it fits in the neighborhood and meets the same A through J criteria that we put every single development project through that need a special use permit. The one before you tonight is heavy industry, it's zoned. I agree it's appropriate because it happens to be a large pad. But I have great respect for the West Passage people. I know Lark Rodericks, I know her sister, I know Mr. Sullivan. These are all people that have very good arguments. I want you to know something. I own, thank you for putting that up. If you see all of the area on the right side of what you see, between the proposed and the pond, that is my farm where I live with my family. That is my 20 acres. When I moved there in 1997, this was a boat building plant full of 105 employees, full of the smell of fiberglass, and it was relatively a mess. And when that went under, I was actually hired to put 23 condominiums in there. And I thought 23 condominiums on a 40-acre site was a better neighbor for me than a heavy industry site. This area was all heavy industry. It's just not anymore. My farm's on one side, the Baker Road residences are on one side. Montauk Point, which was all destined on the south to be a electric plant, is now Carnegie Heights and residential and part of the Aquidneck Club, and it just doesn't have a residential overtone. When the people that bought it, that we got the approvals for 23 units went under, it was foreclosed on, and a number of people started calling me. And there was a request to put 80 units under the new resort ordinance there. There was a request to do outside and inside boat storage there. There was a request to do a hotel and wedding facility there. So the people that I have respect for that don't want it next door, understand that I bought this so I could put solar next door, because I'm not the Audubon Society. I cannot protect this land, but with another neighbor, I bought this land to put solar on the area that was already disturbed and to put Carnegie Trails, an extension of our horse farm, completely a horseshoe around the outside. So that is what's before you tonight. If you look at that pad and you count what I call the 2 parking lots, and those parking lots are that kind of disturbed area on West Shore Road, just to the east of the pad, those equal about 15 acres, and that is all disturbed. There are no mature trees. Graveled parking lots have grown into what I call a wild birch, approximately 1 inch to 2 inch in diameter type trees that have grown there the last couple of years. The problem is I had to be careful what I wished for, because although I didn't necessarily wish for a boat building plant across the street, when the boat building plant ceased to exist, I got a garbage dump. They took down that building and they left 10,000 yards of building debris. And then as soon as they took down the fences and the guard shack, the 2 gravel parking lots that you see there now that were clean when the building was there, and in that picture you just saw, became dumping grounds for every site contractor without a soul that lived 30 miles away. I watched dump trucks that's full of concrete and metal and wood and garbage. We have spent over $50,000 hauling 37 tractor trailer trucks full of debris off the site. We've done full environmentals. And the proposal is what I believe allows me to keep this property next door with a neighbor, at least in my lifetime. I can have a solar farm, which helps defer the cost, and my farm all the way around it. And I'm not disturbing, I happen not to be disturbing any substantial treed area. The panels, if you see, do go along, extend past the gravel. That's the economics of solar. They needed 18 acres instead of 16.5. So there's an acre of woods that I can describe as 3 to 4 inch diameter chokecherry trees, and a bunch of wild cedar is the main part of it. So in writing the ordinance, we looked at the setbacks, and our ordinance says that along West Shore Road, we maintain the same 60-foot setback that you would have if Budweiser beer goes down there and puts a brewery there tomorrow. If you look on the north, we're basically surrounding ourselves by my own farm. So there'll be no solar because it stays on the pad. There'll be no solar really within, I'll let Lynn give me the diameters, but I believe in most cases it's well over 300 feet to the east. If you look to the west, which is to the water, there's probably 500 feet, I think Lynn can tell me better, to the water. There's nothing proposed there. So certainly there's nothing on the waterfront, and there's no necessarily need for screening. If you look to the south, we go along Carnegie Heights. I had a nice meeting with a representative of Carnegie and Aquidneck Club. And if you look at that road that you see in Carnegie Heights, you'll note that that road is 40 feet wide, and then there is approximately another 30 feet where Carnegie bermed up approximately 6 foot of stone wall and then another 7 foot of loom, and then put giant trees on the top. That was to block the building known as Pearson Yachts or Albin Yachts. And they built that berm because they considered it an eyesore before it was taken down. When we met with those representatives on Friday, and I know the full landscape plan at this stage, because we have not gone for master, isn't before you, but the landscape plan you're going to see on that side, rather than put 6-foot abrevieties that block everything on the bottom of the berm, we've proposed to use our budget to fill the top of their berm and to landscape the top. Obviously, that gives the effect of a 6-foot tree day one being 14 feet tall or 15 feet tall, and provides more of a screen for the neighbors. The ordinance is written that the planning board, in looking at our proposal, and thus you looking at our proposal, can look to see whether or not the combination of distance and vegetation combined to meet the goals of the ordinance to screen from people, especially residential areas. Now, again, this is a heavy industry zone. Carnegie Heights, for instance, is zoned heavy industry. Tough to call them heavy industry. It's clearly residentially used. So if you look on West Shore Road, there is all of the abutters on West Shore Road are myself and my farm and the old farmhouse, which is there. So obviously that 60-foot setback and that area is going to be designed so that the landscape plan shows driving down West Shore Road, at least from car height, we minimize the impact. So there's going to be rows of arborvitaes, whether they're tiered. I did hear somebody on the board talk about green fencing. If that's the recommendation, that would make sense for me along West Shore Road and any area where it is practical that somebody from the road or a residence would see it. As you go further south on West Shore Road, you'll notice that we stepped that fence 250 feet off of West Shore Road, and the trails that are cut through there are going to remain part of the farm. So putting a green fence there, although I suppose more is better, no one will ever see that fence. So I think we'll come in with a practical landscaping approach saying on West Shore Road, where we are 60 feet back plus a 40-foot right of way, plus the nearest house setback 40 feet. So there's 120, 130 feet to any panel. We'll remove the dump that is there now. And we will put in, I think, Lynn, there's we even talked about a berm on that side because we don't have any drainage going in that direction. So we can propose a berm and some trees designed to block it. So I think overall, this is the site that everybody says is that site that you don't have to take trees down. It's also a registered brownfield. As a brownfield, the solar industry gets some type of incentives for brownfield, and the energy must be sold to a 501 nonprofit company. I believe discussions are with some of the universities or the state of Rhode Island to sell the back end of the energy on this site. So again, half full, half empty. I look at industrial land next door as what it could be, not at what it is. I can't compel the owners of it to be conservationists and to make it all a pretty park, but I can stop certain development from it. What it allows people like me to do is to figure out a way to break even or to purchase something like this of this magnitude and to get the income to pay the note. The only alternative, quite frankly, is development unless you're deep enough to do it. It also, you have things like the land trust that can come by it, but that is a very benevolent move for people that can afford to do that. But you tie up development rights and you give to your children something worth substantially less value. So for at least 25 years, if the solar goes through, this land will remain noise, odor, and traffic free for me and my neighbors. We'll put whatever tree lines are necessary to minimize the impact. It'll allow me to keep the horseshoe farm and trails open around it. That building that you see the cutout in the building in the middle of it, that was cut out by me to be a private barn because there's some elevation there that overlooks over the water. And I will have the architectural plans, even though it's not going to be built anytime in the next year or two, but that'll be a traditional barn with gambrel roof and traditional materials and match the barns that are across the street on my other property. So I think it's for this stage for pre-master plan approval. We'll be back to you if the planning board requires, and certainly with the architect, with architect landscape plans for the areas that the planning board is concerned with. Like I said, I do not believe anything other than a fence on the west side of the water, with there being almost 400 or 500 feet there. There's not going to be much necessary because we'll keep that natural. But in the areas that are going to be, that people are going to see it, we'll make sure we design accordingly. A couple other wives' tales that I heard. We've done, this is my neighborhood. There are test monitoring wells all around this because it was a brownfield. I guess it would be a good site to tell you whether or not water running off solar fields makes it worse, because these wells are monitored. But it is certainly, I have been told, it does not make it worse. These are all anti-glare panels, because this particular project is a little unique in the town of Portsmouth because nobody else has a skyscraper next to them. I do, called the Carnegie Tower. So you have to be concerned with whether or not there'd be glare in the air. And again, I'm told that the new that there is a type of panel that's approved even for around airports, and there's no glare for those neighbors. So I think as far as tonight goes, Lynn, unless you have anything else, that's probably all we have.
And you good?
Yeah, I don't have anything to add at this point because we're still at a master plan level, so we haven't done the drainage designs. We're gonna keep the landscaping, you know, supplementing the perimeter and making sure that it gives you a good street line view where you're gonna see it, and protect the neighbors where they'll see it. But at this point, we don't have much design material to give to you. I am very familiar with the site because I worked with Court on the last project for the condominium, and my office, as you know, did the Carnegie project several years ago. And we are maintaining a large separation from the coast. That wetland series that you see that comes a few hundred feet in from the coastline, we're maintaining 200 feet from that. So you won't see this from the shoreline. So I don't, I'll just leave it like that for now.
So if you can't, if you can't see the pad now, what we've said to neighbors, if you can't see the pad now, we don't believe you'll see the panels when they're done. Remember, they, by our ordinance, cannot exceed 12 feet. I think the reality is they're closer to 10. So, and there was a 40-foot building that I believe had a pad size in excess of 4.5 acres. So although there's like 8-10 acres of impervious material, a lot of it is the driveway and travel ways that were around it. And as part of our drainage plan, we're looking into not only whether we're going to use retention areas, but that large, you gotta take the good with the bad. We don't have to take down trees, but that large piece of cement also creates water issues. There is a lot of water that goes onto that and drains all around on the properties now. So we are looking into not taking up the building pads themselves, some of which have been test bored and are 18 to 22 inches thick, but a lot of the driveways and gravel around it to create that meadow that Lynn talked about in the other project. And the meadow, instead of cement and pavement, will certainly increase the water quality and the water runoff situations for the farm property, which takes the brunt of it now.
Okay. Thank you, petitioners. Board members, questions for petition? Dick, I heard from you in a bit. Anything? Good? I don't think you heard me. Dick, you muted?
Oh,
You have any questions?
no, Lynn, Leslie and I went down to look at the property earlier last week. And it's, as what Court was saying, it's big concrete slab, and there seems to be sufficient buffering around it right now that it doesn't seem that, off the top of my head, doesn't seem like there's going to be any problems here. It seems like actually probably the best place on the island to put a solar farm. So as it stands right now, I have no problems with this.
So I have to ask, is there any butters calling in on Zoom?
You can, if you're calling in, please dial *6 to raise your hand, and if you're using the Zoom app, you can hit the raise hand button to be called on. I question though the western side of the array, and if it requires I believe it would still require a 30-foot wide vegetative buffer.
I'm sorry, what's the question?
Well, I know you were saying there's the coastal feature, which is to the west of the array. And I don't know how that would exempt the requirement of the 30-foot buffer.
Well, it's a 50-foot buffer, and we own to the water and own 550 foot of waterfront. So our land, this is set, Lynn can correct me, but approximately 550, 600 feet buffer. There's nothing in our ordinance that says that that 600 foot part of that can't be a wetland. What regulates wetland and coastal is that depending on your use, you must be a certain distance from them. We went the maximum you could do on a coastal buffer feature and drew a line 200 feet from the nearest continuous wetland. So we not only have 550 feet of our land that buffers this from the zoning point of view of setback, but the full 200 foot required by coastal and or DEM.
Are you asking, like, can you see it from the water? Is that what you're?
Oh, well, I think there are some properties that are down on Baker that, depending on the topography.
Yeah, on the northwest corner. Like the ones along the water.
Yeah.
Can you bring that up, Mike, or who's ever talking?
So if we look, if they're looking, if these lots all over here are looking back.
That's all heavily, that's pretty dense in there right now. You see the pond or what I call the pool?
Oh, okay. Yeah, there's substantial vegetation.
That's all heavy, dense vegetation. And if you bring that other map back up. You'll see just in the, I guess, the northwest corner of the array. Bring your arrow up right there. Just to this, just up, you'll see a pond, a shape, a little to your right, I'm sorry. That structure right there that you were just on, that structure is a pool. It was a pool that was designed to put boats in and float them apparently by Pearson Yachts. The little tongue that sticks out is where the lift, the travel lift would go out and drop it down. It is 16 feet deep, 16 foot deep concrete pool, 100 by 50 without the tongue. That is just an area that needs to be fixed by us. That needs to be, we either need to use it as a foundation or we need to fill it, but it can't exist in the field as an open pond. We're working on that. The first thing we had to do was clean it out because it was used as a dump site. We couldn't cap it until we cleaned it, but trust me, the volume was incredible when you go 16 feet deep, and it still holds water. So that I said that because that is, I think that one is the 50 by 80. So that closest house is over 200, 250 feet from the corner of, that's the new house, AP. The other road, ones you're talking about are Cross Baker Road, but that, if you pull this up, there's a number of lots that were actually developed by Pearson Yachts. The 9 lots that you see around the edge. And that closest one, it has a house on it, and it's, Lynn, you have I don't know if you have a scale there, it's at least 200 feet, I think.
Or is the topography where the solar array is, it goes up the hill, how many feet probably, roughly, and then it's a plateau, right?
From the water, it goes up the hill substantially. The pad itself, to me, seems almost laser level.
Yeah.
And the gravel parking lots, I would say, can go up 3 to 5 feet between along that access road to West Shore Road. There's a little bit of an uphill there, but not much. That whole, the big pad is very level. Where that building is that I've drawn on the southeast, right there, that building, the base of the pad there comes to a abrupt bank, and it goes up the bank there, and that building sits on top of a bank. Lynn can tell you how high it is, but I would think it's 15-foot elevation. And then it's relatively flat again on top, all the way to West Shore Road. It looks like they carved out the pad back in the day and cut that pad into a hill.
Abutters or interested parties, would anyone like to speak to town council chambers? Okay. Petitioners, Land Court, thank you very much for presenting tonight. I would say that, would you be ready for the August 2nd meeting for landscape review again and finals from us?
Well, I think it's, I want to say this the right way. In writing the ordinance, I'm not even sure we contemplated that it was ever coming to design review because there was no, unless there were buildings proposed. But as long as we get, you're not looking at coming back to design review without first going to master. Right. So I think as long as we go to master, which is scheduled for July 14th, I think we'll get some insight there, or that they're happy with our landscape plan. And then I think that landscape plan especially comes back to you because quite frankly, the knowledge of this board with landscape architects, I think. The ordinance says that the planning board can require a landscape architect and even hire their own, I think. But I think we'll be fine for August 2nd. I do want to say all the concerns with what happens in the future. From a landowner's point of view, if you lease this, what would you make a solar place do? Our ordinance requires for us to price out what it costs to remove this entire system. We then make the solar company post a bond that's in excess of the cost. I don't have it in front of me. I think it's either 110 or 125% of the present day cost to work for inflation. If at any time the solar farm stops producing, it kicks in the bond, and either the owner and or the town can order it decommissioned at someone's price. So we certainly, as drafters of the ordinance, wanted to make sure that there is a plan in effect, like the model ordinance has, to make sure that this doesn't become a problem for the town of Portsmouth. But in all due respect, I have a vested interest in making sure it doesn't become a problem for the landowner. So that bond and that policy are in place for all of us, I guess.
So it's in perpetuity court, is that what you're saying? Or is there a lifespan of 20 years on the performance bond?
The performance bond is for the term of the solar project. These leases, I'm assuming that my lease is the same, or the one that I've at least talked about is the same as others. This is a 25-year lease. And then my one gives options to us and them to continue if we come to mutual agreements. But if it continues, that bond would have to be maintained. And personally, I think if it continues past the original lease, I'd be proposing at the planning board that if you're going to re-up the lease, you should look at the bond, because I think the 10 or 25% may very well cover cost of living increases to take something down in a fixed amount of time. But I don't think anything should be fixed for 50 years. That clearly should be a floating number after the 20 or 25-year period. But from the model ordinance, that's the way they do it.
All right, so August 2nd, you'll be ready to come back to us then, after going to master plan 14th.
I believe so. And if we have any issues on the 14th, I'll call the chairman and make sure he knows that. So for scheduling purposes, you know whether we'll be available or not.
Because of the other petitioners court, we're shooting for August 2nd to form an agenda.
Okay. All right. Well, I thank you for your attention.
All right, if there's not anything else, I think we're good with petitioner 4. Thank you for your time. We will be issuing our opinions on all 4 petitions in the next couple days, which they're all conceptual, so they're not real detailed. Everyone's coming back before us, maybe once, maybe twice. So that's where we stand. Another way for members
Yeah.
to draft our opinion.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye, Lynn. I'll call you.
Bye, thanks.
Bye.